Hello, this is Attorney Jim Bendell, and I want to talk to you about the question of what to do if you're pulled over for a DUI in Idaho. Now, the first thing you got to remember is that you have a right against self-incrimination. So you don't have to answer a lot of questions that the police officer puts to you. You do have to give your name, address, of course. You got to show them your registration, show them your driver's license, your insurance paperwork. Those are things you have to do. But if he starts getting into questions about, well, where were you coming from? Were you at a bar? How much did you have to drink? Just say very politely, I really need to speak to my attorney before I answer those questions, which is your right under the United States Constitution. When I was a prosecutor, some people would try to get clever about things, and they say to themselves, gosh, I probably had too much to drink. I'll tell the officer I had just 2 beers. Well, that's a mistake. First of all, it's a separate crime to make a false statement to a police officer or a trooper. Secondly, a lot of jurors, when they hear that testimony, which will be repeated in court, what you said, the fact that you admit to having any alcohol at all, they might find you guilty. Now, the fact of it is not illegal to drink and drive. It is illegal to drink and drive if you're at the point of impairment, legal intoxication. In Idaho, there's a law that says you can't drink if your blood alcohol level is over 0.08. It used to be 1.0, and before that it was 1.5. But they've been getting stricter and stricter. Some states have gone to 0.05, but we're still here at 0.08. So you don't have to answer those questions. Now, the police officer may ask you to do field sobriety tests. And these are things like have you step out of the car and walk heel to toe 10 steps, and then reverse and walk back 10 steps. He may ask you to count backwards from 100 by 5s, or count forward from 1 by 3s or 5 or something like that. You don't have to do those tests. There's no requirement that you do those tests. He will almost certainly ask you to blow on a breathalyzer, a portable breathalyzer. Now here, there's a dilemma. Technically, you legally have to blow on the breathalyzer. But of course, nobody can force you physically to do it. But the trouble is, in Idaho, if you refuse to do the breath test, there's an automatic suspension of your driver's license for a full year. Whereas if you were convicted of your first DUI, the license suspension is only for 90 days. So you could have a situation where you refuse to take the breath test. Your license is suspended for a year. And then on the criminal part of the case, you go to court, you go before a jury. Jury finds you not guilty of DUI because without a breath test, the officer has to rely upon his visual observations of you, the way you speak, how you react, and so forth. And you could be found not guilty, but you've still lost your license for a year. Another thing to remember is be very, very polite to the police officer, even if he's a jerk. Because most of the police and the troopers have head cams now. And if the jury sees you swearing or acting belligerent to the police, even if you're stone cold sober, they're going to hold that against you. Now, when the case goes to trial, the fact that you've had a breath test does not mean that you're automatically going to lose because it's over the legal limit. The reason is that there are very strict regulations about how often these breath test machines have to be calibrated. They have to be inspected. There's a requirement, for example, that the officer has to physically observe you with nothing in your mouth for 15 minutes. So if you're sitting there chewing gum and he gives you a breath test, that's an invalid breath test. So here are the rules. Don't say anything you don't have to do. Be cooperative to the police. My recommendation is you do take the breath test because you don't want to lose your license for a year. And then be very polite because it's going to be on video. The jury will see it. And my best recommendation is if you're going to drink and drive, find a designated driver, or spend a few bucks for Uber.